My name is Karen, and I am 34 years old. When my dad called the week before Christmas, his voice had that careful warmth he uses when he's about to announce a rule that somehow never applies to everyone equally. He said this year would be different. No gifts, just family time, no pressure, no expectations, just food, togetherness, and being present. I listened quietly, nodded into the phone, and told him that sounded nice. I meant it. Money had been tight since the divorce, tighter still since my husband died, and left me juggling work, a smaller apartment, and a 7-year-old who didn't fully understand why things had changed so much. A Christmas without financial strain sounded like a gift in itself. When I hung up, Marcus was at the kitchen table coloring reindeer with one broken crayon. I told him we'd be having a simple Christmas this year, just time with family. He smiled and said that was okay, then asked if Grandpa would like the card he was making. He spent 20 minutes carefully folding it, even though the corners came out crooked. I baked cookies late that night, boxed them up for everyone, and bought a $10 board game from a discount bin so Marcus and I would have something to open together. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Christmas morning, we drove to my parents' house just after 9. Snow clung to the edges of the street, and Marcus hummed to himself in the back seat, holding his card like it was something precious. When we walked in, the house looked exactly like it always had on holidays. Tree glowing, fireplace crackling, cinnamon in the air. For half a second, I relaxed. Then I saw the floor under the tree. There were gifts everywhere, stacks of them. Glossy bags still showing store logos. My brother's kids were already tearing through wrapping paper, shrieking with that wild joy kids get when there's no end in sight. My sister-in-law handed them more boxes before even saying hello to me. I stood there blinking, trying to reconcile what I'd been told with what I was seeing. Phones, headphones, designer shoes, and then my nephew screamed and held up a large envelope, shouting that they were going to France over spring break. Marcus tugged on my sweater and whispered that maybe the real presents were coming later. I didn't answer him. My dad walked in with his coffee, saw my face, and smiled the way he does when he thinks he's being reasonable. He said I understood, right? This was family time. No gifts for adults. Grandkids were different. And besides, Marcus was still young. My mom came up behind me and patted my shoulder like I was being comforted instead of dismissed. She asked if I understood. I didn't say anything. I just took Marcus by the hand and walked out. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't explain. I think they expected me to call later, to cry, to apologize for being sensitive. Instead, the next morning, while they were still nursing mimosas and congratulating themselves on generosity, a delivery van stopped in front of their house. Inside was a sealed envelope from a lawyer. And that was the moment everything they took for granted began to unravel. I didn't answer my phone that morning. Not when it buzzed the first time, not when it kept buzzing after that. I already knew what they were saying on the other end of those calls. Confusion first, then anger, then the careful softening that always came when they wanted something smoothed over. Instead, I made pancakes with Marcus and let him drown his in syrup. We went to the Science Museum downtown, the one with the loud air cannons and the magnetic wall he loved. He ran from exhibit to exhibit like the world was exactly as it should be, dragging me along by the hand. At one point, he looked up and said this was the best day ever, and I had to lock myself in a bathroom stall for a minute just to breathe through the sting behind my eyes. When we got back to the apartment, my phone was chaos. 17 missed calls, 8 voicemails, texts stacked on top of each other from my mom, my dad, my brother, even my sister-in-law, who usually treated me like background noise. The last message was from my sister Jenna. "Are you serious right now? I'm coming over." I didn't respond. She showed up anyway, 20 minutes later. No coat, hair still half up like she'd left in a hurry, standing in the middle of my living room as if she were waiting for someone to call action. She asked if it was true. I said yes. She asked if I really cut them off. I told her not just like that. Not even close. I opened the file drawer I'd been avoiding for years and pulled out the document Josh had drafted with his lawyer before he died. The trust agreement. The one that gave my parents access to a monthly stipend for household expenses, medical bills, and emergencies. The one I'd continued honoring for 4 years out of respect and habit and the foolish hope that kindness would be enough. I showed Jenna the clause I'd never had the nerve to use until now, the authority to revoke support if the funds were misused or if the relationship became exploitative. Clear language. No ambiguity. I told her about the bathroom remodel they'd never mentioned paying for. The mortgage payoff after Dad's heart scare. The way Mom always talked about Marcus like he was the quiet one, the easy one, the one who didn't need much. I told her how many nights I'd scrubbed offices after work so I could keep sending money that made their lives comfortable while mine got smaller. Jenna sat down slowly, like the weight of it finally hit. She read the letter again, slower this time, like she was looking for a trick that wasn't there. I used to think you were the favorite, she said quietly. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly backwards. That's what they wanted you to think. Divide us. Keep one of us close enough to use, and the other distracted enough not to ask questions. She looked sick by the time I finished. They lied to me for years, she said. I nodded. I told her I was done being the family ATM. She didn't argue. She didn't try to defend them. She surprised me by saying she was on my side. Later that night, she called again, told me Mom and Dad were already talking to a lawyer, that my brother was furious and saying I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. She said Mom claimed I was overreacting to a few presents. But Jenna didn't buy it anymore. She told them it wasn't about the presents. It was about everything before the presents. Every choice, every pattern, every quiet decision that told me and my son exactly where we stood. Then she warned me. They're going to pressure you. Guilt, public sympathy, maybe even grandma. They'll try everything. I told her to let them try. Josh had warned me years ago, back when he first noticed the way my parents looked at our marriage like it was a safety net they didn't have to earn. One day you'll have to choose between them and your dignity, he'd said. I didn't know then how right he was. 3 days passed in silence before the group text came from Dad. Let's talk Saturday at 1. Just us. Let's fix this before it gets worse. No apology, no acknowledgement, just that tone, the one that assumed I'd fall back into line if they spoke firmly enough. Jenna replied first. Fine. I waited a few hours before sending a thumbs up. I didn't want to go, but I wanted to look them in the eye. If they were going to pretend this was just a misunderstanding, they were going to have to do it face to face. Saturday came faster than I wanted it to. Jenna picked me up just before noon, and the car ride was quieter than usual. She kept adjusting the heat, glancing at me like she wanted to say something and didn't know how to start. Halfway there, she muttered that she had a bad feeling about this. I told her I hadn't even brought my coat inside the house last time. I wasn't planning on staying long enough to need it. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, my brother's SUV was already there, backed in like he might need a quick exit. His wife wasn't with him. I assumed she'd decided staying home was safer than watching another uncomfortable family confrontation. We walked in without knocking. The living room was silent in that staged way that tells you something's already been rehearsed. No coffee on the table, no leftover cookies. My dad stood near the dining room with his arms crossed, my mom hovering off to the side like she wasn't sure where she belonged. Then I saw him, a man in his 40s, gray blazer, polished shoes, sitting in my dad's chair at the table like he owned the place. My dad introduced him too casually. This is Daniel. He's here to help guide the conversation. Jenna's eyebrows shot up. I stepped forward and guessed out loud what everyone was pretending not to say. Not your lawyer, just someone friendly enough with legal buzzwords to try and talk me down. Daniel stood and offered his hand. I ignored it. He launched into a speech about family finances, about how emotionally charged estate support can be, about the importance of protecting everyone involved. He spoke slowly, confidently, like he'd done this before. Then he dropped the point he'd clearly been waiting for. The trust your late husband left was meant to help the family, he said, and unilateral decisions like the one I made could have unintended consequences. I cut him off. Josh left that trust for me and our son, not for bathroom remodels, not for European vacations. I allowed my parents access out of kindness. That doesn't make it theirs. My brother leaned forward, shaking his head. You don't get it, he said. That money stabilized everything. You just ripped the rug out from under them. Jenna shot him a look sharp enough to shut him up. I turned to my parents. Did you really drag me here to watch some fake advisor guilt me into rolling over? Daniel tried to jump back in, his tone smoothing out, but I was already pulling my phone from my pocket. I hit record. The room reacted instantly. My mom gasped. My dad stepped back. Daniel raised his hands like I'd pulled a weapon. You can't record me without my consent. I told him calmly that this was a one-party consent state and this wasn't a private legal meeting. It was an ambush in my parents' dining room. My dad snapped at me to turn it off. That's when Jenna stood. She said she was done. This was supposed to be a conversation, not a setup. She turned to our parents and finally let loose everything she'd been holding back for years. Karen paid your bills, she kept you comfortable, and you thanked her by humiliating her in front of her child on Christmas morning. My mom tried to mumble something about miscommunication, about never meaning for it to look that way. Jenna wasn't buying it. You meant for it to be that way. You just didn't expect her to stand up. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I followed, but as I reached the hallway, my mom called my name. Karen, wait, you don't know the whole story. I froze. I turned slowly. She wasn't angry. She looked tired, afraid. My dad glanced at her like she'd said too much. I asked her what story. She didn't answer. My dad told me not to dwell on the past, said digging up old wounds would only make things worse. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money or favoritism. They were hiding something they thought justified how they treated me all these years, something they believed I didn't know. I didn't push then. I walked out with Jenna and didn't say another word. But my mom's sentence followed me all the way home. You don't know the whole story. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when she said it. Not defensive, not manipulative, scared, like something buried for decades was finally starting to crack. The next morning, before Marcus even woke up, I drove to Jenna's place. She already had coffee brewing, like she knew I'd be there. I told her I didn't think it was a guilt tactic. I thought it was fear. We decided to start with the one person in the family who had never been good at lying when caught off guard. Grandma. She was in assisted living 20 minutes away, still sharp, still blunt. We showed up unannounced. Jenna made small talk, easing in, but Grandma's eyes narrowed the moment I mentioned my parents acting strange. When I asked if there was something I should know, she went very still. Then I asked the question that had been circling my head all night. Was I adopted? Her hand trembled on her teacup. She didn't answer. She didn't deny it either. The silence after that question felt heavier than anything my parents had said the day before. Grandma didn't look surprised. She looked tired, like someone who'd been carrying a box for too long, and finally realized it was about to be pried open. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her teacup, knuckles pale, and she stared past us for a long moment before speaking. You weren't adopted, she said slowly. Not legally. She paused, then sighed. But no, you were never meant to be theirs. Not at first. Jenna's head snapped toward her. What does that even mean? Grandma finally looked at me. Her eyes softened in a way that made my chest ache. She told us about a woman from their church, decades ago, a single mother already struggling with 2 children who found herself pregnant again in her late 30s. No money, no support, terrified of judgment. She hid the pregnancy as long as she could, gave birth quietly, and planned to give the baby up for adoption without involving agencies. My mother stepped in. Off the record, no paperwork, no official process, just a private agreement and a lie everyone agreed to protect. Hospital forms adjusted, stories aligned, a baby brought home and introduced as theirs. That baby was you, Grandma said. Jenna looked like the air had been knocked out of her. I felt strangely still, like something in me had been bracing for this without knowing it. Grandma went on, explaining how my parents swore they'd raise me as their own, how they promised never to let me feel different. But promises made under pressure don't always age well. My mom resented the situation more than she ever admitted, not because of me, but because of the woman who left me with her, a friend she felt abandoned by, a responsibility she never fully chose. They loved you, Grandma said quickly, as if trying to soften the blow. But it was complicated, and your father, he followed your mother's lead, always has. When Jenna finally spoke, her voice was shaking. So all those years, the way they treated her, Grandma nodded. They never said it out loud, but they acted like you were borrowed, like you came with strings. Everything snapped into place with brutal clarity. The favoritism, the distance, the way my achievements were acknowledged politely, but never celebrated. The way my brother's needs always came first. The way my husband's money was treated like community property instead of my family's lifeline. I wasn't the favorite or the burden. I was the reminder of a secret they never resolved. We drove back in silence. Jenna pulled the car over halfway home and just sat there gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard. "They made me resent you," she said finally. "They made me think you were the golden one. I hated you for years over nothing." I reached for her hand. We were both manipulated. When we went back to my parents' house, I didn't knock. I opened the door and walked in like I belonged there, because I did, no matter what story they'd told themselves. My mom was already in the living room. She didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She sank into the chair across from me, like she'd been waiting for this moment to arrive. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," she said quietly. My dad tried to interrupt, to smooth it over, but I stopped him. I asked them why they thought secrecy justified cruelty, why they let me feel like I had to earn my place. My mom admitted the truth she'd been avoiding for decades. She'd been afraid I'd leave if I ever knew. So she kept me insecure instead, dependent, grateful. That was the moment I stopped needing explanations. I told them they didn't get to rewrite the past, but they could choose how the future looked. That would be on my terms. Not money, not guilt, not control. My mom handed me a small envelope with Marcus's name written on it and asked carefully if they could try again with him. I didn't answer right away. I didn't walk away either. Outside, Jenna told me something I'll never forget. "I don't care how you got here. You're my sister, and I'm not letting them hurt you again." For the first time in my life, I cried. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I finally understood. I didn't rush anything after that. I didn't storm back into their lives or cut them off forever with a dramatic declaration. I needed space that belonged to me, not space taken as punishment. Weeks passed, where the only contact was quiet and uneven. My dad sent short messages, mostly pictures. The dog curled on the porch, the backyard after the first snowfall. No lectures, no guilt, no demands. My mom tried baking cookies and sent a photo of the burnt edges with a caption that said she'd forgotten how much Marcus liked them soft. It wasn't an apology. It was effort. Small and clumsy, but effort. I didn't let them see Marcus right away. I needed to feel like I was choosing, not surrendering. I needed them to feel what absence actually meant, not the temporary discomfort they assumed would pass. Jenna checked in every few days, not to pressure me, but to make sure I was okay. She didn't play mediator. She didn't soften their words. She let them sit with what they'd done and let me decide what came next. In mid-March, a package arrived at my door. No card, no return address, just a wooden box with Marcus's name etched into the lid. Inside were old photos I'd never seen. Me at 3, asleep on my dad's chest, my mom holding my hand at the beach, her smile real and unguarded. Tucked in the back was a single typed page. No excuses, no justifications. One sentence that hit me harder than anything else. "We failed at being your parents, but if we can still learn to be your family, we will try." I showed it to Jenna. She read it once and nodded. "Let them try," she said, "but on your terms." So I set them. Easter at the park, 1 hour, public place, no gifts. My mom brought a kite. My dad helped Marcus untangle the string without saying much. When the kite finally lifted, I saw something shift in their faces. They weren't looking at him like a cute grandkid or a second chance at being fun grandparents. They were looking at him like they were afraid to mess it up again. Time did the rest. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly. By fall, I invited them for Thanksgiving. My house, my table, simple food, equal seats, no careful hierarchy. Jenna brought wine and gave a quiet toast halfway through dinner about how blood doesn't make family, showing up does. My brother didn't say much, but his kids gave Marcus a gift they'd picked themselves, a comic book and a model rocket. Marcus's eyes lit up like he'd been seen. That night, after everyone left, Marcus curled into my side on the couch and asked if they were staying for good this time. I told him I didn't know. I told him we don't wait to be chosen anymore. We choose ourselves. And if people want to be part of that, they meet us where we are. Outside, snow started to fall, quiet and steady, the kind of peace that doesn't announce itself, the kind you earn.